How are you?
Hey, good, Yaman. How are you?
Good. I saw you popped up very quickly. You got something going on?
Now, just excited for the post that he mentioned 12.5 being tested in the field.
Well, we have just the man to comment on it right now. Omar, how are you? How was your weekend?
Hey, crazy
Yeah,
weekend.
wild stuff, man.
Um,
Wild.
yeah, hold on, let me can you hear me well?
Yes. So I'm gonna have to move Omar out of the space today because of that question. So what do you think about 12.5 news that's being tested right by Chuck's house?
Yeah, pretty exciting. I wasn't expecting him to necessarily be making progress on 12.5 this early. 12.4 has been really good for me this weekend. I recorded it doing 7-0 intervention drives back to back yesterday. Basically every drive I did for hours across Los Angeles in crazy traffic, it just did it all without intervention. So it's looking really good. I mean, it's a little bit puzzling what's kind of going on here. People are dying to get 12.4 on their cars. They're starting to work on 12.5. Are they just going to skip over 12.4 entirely? Or more likely, I think what they'll probably do is start rolling out 12.4 and then start getting 12.5 out to early access testers at the same time. So that by the time 12.4 is finished rolling out, they can then follow that up with 12.5. Now, 12.5, of course, brings the new end-to-end stack to the highways, which is going to be super exciting to see. We're going to see a huge jump in highway driving performance. And also, it should be adding Cybertruck support. So I know a lot of people are dying waiting for FSD or even basic autopilot on the Cybertruck. And sounds like we might be getting a little closer to that.
So So you think that we're going to start rolling 12.5 to early access testers by this weekend, next weekend?
I have no clue. I mean, typically Chuck sees those drivers a few days before it goes out to employees. So that would be shockingly soon and ahead of what I expected. But it could be that it's a ways out. I'm not really sure. But hopefully we see it pretty soon start to roll out to employees and then early access customers.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually, one of the questions I asked this morning was, when do you think we're going to get FSD on Cybertruck? And somebody said in the replies here, I'll pin at the top of the screens, somebody said, do they need a data center that's being built? So the new hardware for data center Gigatex isn't even complete yet. Maybe 2 months after Elon declares it's up and running. But Omar, just to kind of clarify, the data center is not needed to get FSD on Cybertruck, right?
No, I don't believe it is. I mean, they have GPUs already, right? So when they have the new data center up, they'll have a lot more compute, which will be useful. They can train, for example, hardware 3 and hardware 4 models in parallel. But they could probably get 12.5 running. I mean, obviously they're testing it, right? And the thing isn't built yet. So they're clearly using the existing compute to train FSD 12.5 before the new data center's ready.
So do we know for a fact that 12.5 is going to go up to Cybertruck?
Well, that's what they had said in the past. So I'm
But that was like
assuming
a couple
nothing's
months
changed
ago,
there.
right? That was like a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we'll find out soon enough. How is the data center build out going? Any news on that front?
I haven't been following it that closely, but it looks like it's progressing well from what I've seen. So that's going to be really exciting to get online. I don't think people realize the significance of a model that has a 5 times higher parameter count. I'm really curious to see what sort of driving behaviors it exhibits. I mean, the fact that existing the fact that the existing system's already able to do, entire days 7 out of 7 without intervention, I can't imagine what a model that's 5 times larger is going to do in terms of performance.
Well, hopefully it'll lead to more consistency in behavior. So, for example, you posted a video about it yesterday that it got into the other direction, kind of crossed the yellow line and started driving on the other side of the road, right?
Yeah, I did do that at one point. So that was not a good, it was a critical error. It could cause a serious crash. I mean, the thing about these things is like a relatively minor bug can result in a pretty serious situation. So to the computer, it's just, kind of off by a little bit. But for, the driving, I think basically what I theorized is because the road is curved and because of the way it sees the yellow line, it thought it was maybe a double yellow lane where you pull into to make a left. So a lot of times yesterday I saw it pulling into a double yellow lane to make a left turn on a busy street, which is good. You want to do that, but it seems that there was a little bit of an issue where you would think that the other side of the road was a double yellow lane when it wasn't. So hopefully they are able to resolve that. I think that that's probably one of the reasons we haven't seen 12.4 roll out more widely. We may be waiting for a 12.4.4 or something like that before they send it wide that resolves that issue. Because especially with hands free, right? If you're going to tell everyone, okay, you're hands free, you can keep your hands in your lap, then the likelihood that they won't respond quickly to something like that increases. Now, I haven't seen any incidents of it trying to do it while a car's coming, only when the road is clear. So it's not as serious in that regard, but probably still something that they want to patch before sending out hands-free FSD to everybody.
Okay, good. About Tesla, how is the rollout going? 12.4 rollout.
Well, it's paused, but so nothing new coming out. So looks like they are either getting ready for a new version to be released, which is most likely, or they just need to look at something more carefully before continuing the rollout. So my guess would be we should be getting a new version. I don't know if that will be 12.5, probably not, but probably a new 12.4.4 or something.
Okay, so I mean, it looks like 12.5 is what they're focused on at this point. I mean, maybe Omar said earlier that maybe they'll send it out to early access testers while 12.4 goes wide. But right now, we only have about 10% of North America fleets that have 12.4, right? I mean, that's a big jump from 10% to 50%.
Yeah, so depending on how far they are with 12.5, they might go with that. And if you remember, I actually thought that they would just skip 12.4 altogether when it was initially delayed. But on the other hand, 12.5 is a big change, especially on the highway. So I would expect a very slow, gradual rollout of 12.5. And with that, they may decide to do 12.4 first, 12.4.4, send it to more cars if it's ready.
That makes sense. Uzi, how are you? Thank you about Tesla.
I've been well, looking at the stock a little bit. I'm excited with the rollout. Saw 1010, not 1010. 88 was officially confirmed as postponed. So doing well.
All right, Uzi changed the topic, so let's go with that. Omar, what do you think about this? Elon just replied about an hour ago and confirmed the delay. What do you think about that reply?
Yeah, it matches up with what I've been hearing from people I've been talking to. Apparently, Elon went to the design team and he said, I don't like the front. We need a different front. We need to make some changes. And they're now going ahead and changing the prototypes, changing the marketing materials, everything with this new design for the front of the vehicle that they've got. And he said something that which I didn't know is this allows us to show off a few more things. So I think they're going to give demos. They're going to make it a little bit better. So good to have confirmation on that. Unfortunate it's getting delayed, but I think it's going to be an even better event than it was supposed to be in August.
That sounds like a good question. Maybe we can talk about what do you think Elon asked to be changed that led to this couple month delay?
From what I heard,
with,
it's just aesthetics for the most part, but it could be maybe front bumper cam or something. I don't know.
Mm. Okay. But we don't have a new date, right? Do you think it's going to be October, as the Reuters article said?
I think it's going to be as soon as they're ready to show it off. So I think Elon told the team, get to it. And I think October is a date they talked about internally, but they'll probably confirm either on the earnings call or when they send out invites what date they've actually selected. Right now, it'd be a safe bet to assume October.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about one more thing, Tesla, and then maybe we can talk a little about the what happened over the weekend. The Model Y rear-wheel drive owners in the US are seeing $1,000 30-mile range upgrade option instead of the $1,600 50-mile option. And then recent Model Y rear-wheel drivers in the US can now unlock 50 extra miles of range for $1,600. Do we have any Model Y owners on the board? This is a great deal, don't you think? I mean, 50 miles for $1,600.
Yeah, seems like a pretty good deal to me.
Yeah.
I would buy it for sure if I had one
Yeah.
of these Model Y.
Yeah. I think they had a similar upgrade offer a few years ago, and I think it was about $2,500 or $3,000. This was a long time ago, though. How do you think they achieved
They've
this?
done this many times over the years.
Yeah, not in recent years, though. Not in recent years. But
Not that recently, but even since the Model S days, it was done just to simplify inventory management and distribution.
can you elaborate on that last part?
Well, at times it has been actually easier to make it the same car and software lock the battery rather than have two different versions of the car, having to manage twice as much inventory, having to manage, more complicated order routing. Just having fewer SKUs of the car is sometimes actually easier than, the cost savings for the battery. So in this case, I think they introduced a Model Y standard range and they had a lot of long range inventory and they just kind of software locked it. So then any Model Y long range could become a standard range, just with a software update, right? Rather than having to make a new car. So now you're able to offload all that inventory, selling them at a discounted price, and you've got this sort of range lock that helps keep the battery longer, longer cycle life because you're not charging as much. It's software limited. And then also you can, just charge them for an upgrade later if they want. So it was something that they did. They could have put a smaller battery pack in the vehicle, but instead they said, okay, let's just use the existing vehicles, make it a standard range with a software update, and then they can actually pay us later and unlock the long range. It's pretty smart. And I don't think they have quite as much battery as a long range Model Y, but it is a lot closer with the 50 additional miles of range. It's a pretty sweet deal for people who bought the standard range. You get to have your cake and eat it too. You got the discounted Model Y, but now you can also unlock that extra range anytime you want.
About Tesla, any views on this extra range? Some people replied to Sawyer's tweet and they said this should be free. Tesla should be giving this away for free.
I don't know what's where exactly it's coming from. It might be just as Omar said, inventory simplification or something. Just or it could be maybe they had a reserve because they were not sure if that's will work reliably or not. So they had something in reserve, and then after more field testing, they realized that they can release that reserve and sell it for extra money.
Omar, what do you tell people that says, I paid for these batteries. If this was software locked before, Tesla should unlock it for free. This is my hardware.
Well, people really complain about anything, but in this case, I completely sympathize with these people. As a matter of fact, Tesla should be giving away the whole car for free. I'm tired of paying tens of thousands of dollars for all these Teslas. FSD should be free. Of course, everybody loves things to be free, but if I mean, what's the point of buying the long range then if the standard range gets the extra range for free? It doesn't make any sense. So, some of these people, I'm like, hey, are you new to Tesla? They've literally been doing this since the Model S days. It's been a technique they've used. People always sort of complain, oh, why do I have this battery in my car and I can't use it? But Tesla didn't have to give you the battery. You paid for a standard range. They would have been in their right to give you a smaller battery. The fact that they gave you a bigger battery that you can unlock and you didn't pay for it is only a benefit to them, or only a benefit to you, I mean. And I think there's also, sort of some regulatory reasons and stuff like that, why they have to do it that way. But yeah, it's just sort of fairness, right? People were asked, hey, do you want to buy the standard range or the long range? Some people paid more for the long range. Some people said, no, I want to save money and go for the standard range. It's not really fair if, the standard range customers get more range for free when the long range customers paid more. So I think this is a pretty fair compromise. The long range, I think, was what, $3,000 to $5,000 more than the standard range when it was available. I can't really remember. So to be able to unlock that additional range for only 1,000 to 1,600, you're still coming out quite ahead compared to, someone who bought the long range, I think.
You got me there with your sarcasm at the beginning. My eyebrows rose, both eyes, actually, not even just one eye. Both eyebrows rose. I was like, whoa, that's an answer I did not expect. And then we switched. Dallas.
I think I agree with that for the most part. I guess the only thing I would get hung up on, and maybe I could be wrong here, is isn't there a thought that you're driving around with a battery that weighs more because there's more capacity than you're using? So are you getting less efficiency in some way? I don't know enough to be dangerous on that, but that's just a thought I had.
I mean, you're getting the same efficiency as the long range Model Y, but you're also getting better battery life. Your battery is going to last longer. You're going to have higher cycle life because it's softer limited. So there's pluses and minuses to it. But it's not going to be any worse efficiency than the Model Y long range, obviously.
Elon replied to Omar. This was July 12th, so on Friday. The amount of testing time it takes to figure out if the new AI is better than the existing AI, as measured by miles between interventions, is a limiting factor on progress. The better FSD gets, the longer it takes to find interventions. All right.
Yeah, I can understand this. I mean, you can drive for like a whole day now without finding any interventions. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but they send it out to hundreds of thousands of cars, so they're getting how many miles a day, right?
Right. I think he's really talking about before it goes out that widely. They kind of have to start testing it themselves internally. And that's a lot more challenging when miles per intervention is shooting up.
So does that mean though in the future it's going to get even harder? Like it's testing and validation is just going to continue to get harder and harder, and it's going to take longer and longer.
Not necessarily. You would expect the fleet to also grow as well. You'd expect their validation techniques to improve. So that hopefully helps. But this is what we call a good problem to have.
Uzi?
Well, I'm just thinking about validation on scale, and I don't have an answer, but hopefully that's what they figure out with their own fleet.
Humanities.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that Tesla is a different type of company, and they're actually, in my view, following the software industry, where you can make changes to your vehicle through software changes, which the software industry has done for years. You don't download a new version, you don't get a new car. They just change something and it behaves differently. And this is brand new to what people are used to, so I don't see a problem with charging to unlock extra features. Thanks.
Do I have any speakers, any listeners who are politically oriented? We're going to switch to talking about the weekend. If you have any strong views, one side or the other, about what happened over the weekend, please request to speak. Omar, where were you when you heard the news that there was an assassination attempt?
I was driving my Tesla, and having some fun with it. I was driving the Cybertruck, actually. Good time to be in a bulletproof car, maybe. And my girlfriend texted me and she said, "Oh my God, someone shot Trump." I was like, "What the fuck?" Oh, sorry. I got to get home immediately. So I drove home as fast as I could and turned on the news and actually opened X before I even turned on the news.
Yeah, I learned about it on X. I was with a friend of mine, and we had one of the spaces going on, and heard it first on X. So, and then I went on to some of the legacy media channels to kind of see what they're saying. There was no news on there for a while. Humanities.
Sorry, my mute took a while to get off. I just want to make it clear, I'm an independent. I'll vote either way for the best candidate. I find it appalling that the number of public officials that have said, hopefully next time he doesn't miss. I don't understand why these people aren't fired immediately. I think the Secret Service fell down on the job so bad. I can't even go into it. I could go on for an hour about where they failed. It's unbelievable that the events that occurred, and I'll just leave it there.
That was
I just think it was a really sad day for our country. I mean, it was a good day to put politics aside and look at it from the human factor of look where we're at. I mean, this is, I don't care what side of the aisle you sit on. This is just a really, really sad deal.
Yeah, it really is. It's a little surprising to me how fast people switched from "wow, this is crazy, this should not be happening" to becoming back to political bickering. I agree with that. Uzi.
I think there's three lines of thoughts as to the motive. I think some people believe it's staged. Some people would say there's a mental health problem, and then some people are like, this person didn't act alone, and there's something fishy about how it went down.
I mean, what do you think is the probability of? Can you elaborate on that something fishy part?
Yeah, well, some people are saying Secret Service messed up. I think that's in the middle camp. But then I think people don't believe he acted alone, and that there was a convenient lapse, allowing this like 20-year-old to be able to shoot at the president at a rally.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of amount of time when the people near that building spotted the person at the rooftop, and when there was a shot taken, I think it could be up to like 2 minutes, which is insane. Dallas.
Yeah, the clip that was really troublesome to me was there was an angle showing the sniper team on the roof of the Secret Service as well as the president in the bottom right corner of the same shot. And you can clearly see the two guys on the roof about 5 seconds before the first shots rang out. They went on to some level of alertness where they were, looking like they were about to shoot something. And then right when those shots rang out, they returned fire immediately. So there was a little bit of me that was like, okay, well, if they saw something, why be reactionary rather than actionary if you're protecting the president of the United States? I mean, I don't know enough about any of this stuff to be a professional, but that was troublesome for me to watch. Like, that's what sparked kind of what he just said in my mind of, okay, were they told to stand down? Like maybe they thought it was one of their own guys. I don't know.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of speculation going around, and people are curious about what happened. Sierra, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing all right. Interested to hear you all talking about this in this space. What a crazy time to be alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you been following over the weekend all the speculation and all the news? Do you have any thoughts on it?
I think there definitely was some gross negligence in the just the surveying of the area. I also saw a lot of clips of civilians noticing the shooter and trying to draw attention to it, which with enough time you would think for there to be a reaction. But mostly, I just think it's a really sad time for our country, regardless of your political affiliation. We are not healthy when presidential candidates are being shot at.
Uzi.
I mean, my first statement was more descriptive, but I personally feel that the question is who's responsible. And I think Secret Service, they're supposed to be proactive, and that means that there's no opportunity for any harm to be done to special people. And I also have heard that there was, I guess it depends on the radius of protection. So different groups have different protection. So I think this guy was in the middle radius, which might have been for the police, but in my opinion, it all falls under the chief protectors of special people, which would be Secret Service.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that there was like there's mission failure at a minimum. There's something went wrong. Okay, I think it's a bit of a jump at this point to say there was maybe an internal help. I'm not sure about that. I don't think anyone has. At least I haven't seen any proof of that. I think there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of circumstantial evidence, but no proof. And the investigations will go on for years. Omar, what do you think is the probability of there was some sort of a motivated effort with internal, whether it's sort of some sort of agency or from the government itself, help to the assassin? Omar? I think Omar is having some connection issues. Let's go to My Good Life.
I guess I wanted to make a comment about the assassination attempt and what happened on Saturday. I guess the thing that I'm kind of frustrated by is you see a lot of people saying that because he survived this assassination attempt, now he's got to be, our front runner for office. Personally, I'm not a Trump fan. I'm not a Biden fan. I wish neither of them were our candidates that we had to choose from between these two parties. I think people forget that the last election, Trump tried to overturn the results of the election. And now we're suddenly forgiving that or forgetting that and not condemning it as an act of treason. I'm really disgusted. I think Biden should have not run for re-election. I'm still hoping that he steps down and another person takes his place. I think that's actually probably still a wise strategy. But that's really just what I have to say about it is, I'm not a fan of either of these candidates, but
So what are you going to do? What are you going to vote for?
I'm going to vote for not Trump, that's for sure.
So you're going to vote for Biden?
If Biden is the candidate, yes, I'm going to vote for Biden. And that's not because I don't disagree with many of the Democratic policies. It's that I think Trump is a disgusting human being. He has no character. He has no integrity. He is unfit for office, and it's a dangerous path to let him be president again.
Okay. Omar, are you with us?
I just wanted to mention really quick that
you have to wait on mute and raise your hand like everybody else. Omar, I think you have connection issues. Let's go to Wessex.
Hey, Alan, what's happening?
Nothing much. What do you think about this?
It's a slow weekend, right?
Yeah, slow weekend.
I'll tell you who, interestingly enough, did a good job covering this is Randy Kirk. If anybody wants to check out Randy Kirk's video, he's a Tesla guy. He had some really good points, and so I'll just kind of borrow one real quick. Clearly security just let everyone down to leave that building 150 yards away open, and where it's able for someone to go up there and take a shot is inexcusable. And frankly, anybody would know better than that. So I don't know how that happened. But then on the flip side, how did this 20-year-old park a mile away, take a rifle all the way to that building and get up there? Somehow either a ladder was there already waiting on him, or he brought it with him, which would be insane. So you have those two things. One, a security lapse that's unimaginable. And then secondly, some 20-year-old capable of knowing the exact building that's not being watched and able to go all the way up there like that. Those two things just don't line up really well. I don't know if it was just dumb luck, bad luck, of course, but It's peculiar, to say the least.
Humanities.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out how proud I am to be in this space and be an American and be on X. When the gentleman that spoke previous to the last one made his comments and was allowed to do so without being interrupted or yelled at, or that's what free speech is all about. So, thanks.
Dallas.
I always fall back on, I think there's really only two possible outcomes or possible things that really were going on this event. And, it's either that the Secret Service isn't really as tough and men in black as we make them out to be. I mean, that's definitely an option, because if you looked at it, they kind of looked like buffoons when it all went down. I mean, you had people who didn't know how to holster their firearms. You had some images are showing some of the agents hiding behind the president. Images are hard, right? It's hard to tell what that really is really going on. So maybe that's one, is that the Secret Service really isn't as ironclad as we make them out to be. Or this is not to bring up history, but maybe this is kind of the CIA JFK deal where there is some deeper cahoots going on. I mean, I love this country, but we've done some crazy things like that in the past, and who's to say that wasn't what this was again? Again, I'm not taking a side on it, but there's plenty of reasons for what went down. I just don't know what it was.
Okay. Omar, checking in with Omar. Or to Omar.
Hey, yeah, I'm having a lot of
you're
connection
back.
issues. I'm trying
Yeah.
for my laptop now.
Okay. Well, glad you're back. Any thoughts on? So my question to you was, what do you think is the probability that there was this guy, this sniper or the assassin, actually had some help from the government or some agency or some nefarious, inside job kind of thing?
Well, probably low, but it would be interesting if it was that kind of conspiracy. I mean, I'd probably call it less than 5%. But if I wasn't the government and wanted to engage in a conspiracy to assassinate Trump, because I said, oh my God, Biden is so old, there's no way he's winning this. Execute Plan 66. Send in some random kid and tell the Secret Service not to do anything until after he takes a shot. But, it's probably not that. It's probably just some kid who sounds like from his classmates he was bullied. He was kind of a weirdo, kind of a loner. And actually, they really haven't been able to figure out what his motive is. So I suppose a conspiracy is a possibility. I mean, people love conspiracies around presidential assassinations. People are still talking about the JFK assassination and that kind of stuff. So probably wasn't a conspiracy, but maybe 5% it is.
Okay, thank you. Humanities.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I give you a little background briefly?
Sure.
All right. So I grew up on a farm ranching community. I was taught to shoot rifles at a very young age. 5 years old, I'm out shooting prairie dogs in the field. And I know people may get upset with that, and please don't. Farmers hate that. It destroys their crop.
I'm glad you let me know so that I know not to get on your bad side.
No, I'm a good person. I wouldn't. Anyway, so I understand ballistics, long range shooting, things of that sort. And I'll give you a little other piece. When I was in grade school, I had to talk to the FBI because I wrote a paper that the president wasn't protected sufficiently, because at that age, I knew that a sniper could easily take someone out at 300 yards without any problem whatsoever. And so when I see a circle of protection through the Secret Service where and so when I see a circle of protection through the Secret Service where a 20-year-old is able to get 130 yards away with a sniper rifle and not be challenged, I find that absolutely on that is our level of protection to a presidential candidate. That's it.
Thank you. Uzi.
I mean, I also would like to pose, our government can be extremely competent when it wants to be. And that's a little bit of the conspiracy thinking. But on the other hand, it's like a kid that's pretty stupid and reckless. So when you have young men who are willing to do anything and die for that, you don't know. So there's this level of uncertainty that you have with this case for sure.
Thank you. Dar Vigil.
Yes, I just wanted. I hate that I'm asking this question because I'm trying to put my critical thinking hat on, and so what I don't know is what is the Secret Service training like? What are the protocols? And the only thing I was thinking is because I'm definitely feeling like you guys are feeling exactly right now, but then I'm thinking, is it possible that they're training when somebody says, "Hey, look over here"? They're trained not to look over there because they have to focus on the thing they're supposed to be focusing on. But to the previous gentleman's point, a lot of this stuff bothers me. But I'm trying to think, what are the possibilities? Because we have to find the investigators. Understand, yet we still don't have all the information, and we're saying a lot of things about people most of us have never even met, and we're kind of just talking about them based on the perspectives that the media gives us of them. So that's the other thing I think about. But this again, to your point, I'm feeling pretty much in line with what everybody else here is saying. I just wanted to throw that out there as a thought, to kind of think of what training does the Secret Service have, and we don't know those protocols. That's it. But
Thank you.
Feeling like you guys.
Okay, thank you. My good life.
I don't necessarily want to change the topic, and it's not really necessarily changing the topic, but I wanted to kind of spitball, like, what do you think is the likely outcome from the standpoint of, is Biden going to be the nominee, or are the Democrats, do you think, going to try to still pivot to someone else? And I guess flash forward to the election, if the Democratic nominee wins again, do you think Trump as well as Republicans will accept the election results and there'll be peace in this country, or do you think there'll be riots and chaos if the Democrats were to win again?
Wessex.
Yeah, it's interesting. I thought about this. I've really been thinking that Gavin Newsom was the likely backup plan, maybe Kamala. But now, if I'm either of them, I don't want it, because who wants to go up against Trump now that this happened? I think that's an interesting thought, that they're going to wait it out probably for the next 4 years. That's a guess on my part, of course.
Dallas.
I agree with that sentiment. I think this is only doing good things for his campaign. Whether you like the guy or not, I happen to be a fan, but I mean, I try to look at this from an unbiased perspective. I mean, you look at what happened when Reagan was shot. Like, these things only do good for their poll numbers, whether that's a good thing or not. That's just the way it is. I mean, you can look at his Polymarket betting statistics right now, and he's through the roof. I mean, he's close to 70% betting favorite odds to win. So, do you really want to go run against a guy who's probably going to beat you? I don't know. I almost agree with that. So I think it's time to start accepting that he's a very likely potential to win. And that is in a world where the election is clean and untampered with. And that's a whole other debate. I know someone just mentioned that, but I do think he's the most likely candidate to win after the assassination attempt.
I guess, wait a second. You just said clean and fair election. I mean, how many different studies did they do on the last election to demonstrate that it was one of the cleanest elections in history, if not the cleanest? And like, that's why we have all these conspiracy theories, is because we have one person who didn't accept the last election results reporting that there's fraud and conspiracy happening, and that's who we want to reelect again. And if he loses, he's going to say the same thing, and that's going to just infuriate his base to the point where there could be chaos if he loses.
Let's go to Sierra.
I just wanted to urge everyone, as we talk about these topics, I'm personally politically homeless. I will vote for whomever I think has the best policies that support my belief system, and that changes over the years. But as we are speculating and attempting to place blame and figure out who is responsible. I think it's really important that we all take a moment and wonder, how, as a country, did we get here? There's so much unrest and people are so unhappy that occurrences like this are becoming more commonplace. So just take some time off the internet and evaluate your own belief system and try and think about some of the root causes that have led to such unrest, and put that forth when you make your informed decision in November. And of every American, and I don't want to see us suffer like this anymore.
Thank you, Lincoln.
Thanks, Amon. When I first saw what happened, there was a part of me that said, wow, imagine if Trump planned this in order to like look really good. And then half a second later, I thought, that's ridiculous. It's the same thing that like every person who has all these freaking conspiracies needs to do. Yet you have a thought, oh, I wonder if this, I bet it's that.
Lincoln, are you taking a shower right now?
I'm totally in the shower. I'm always in the shower. Oh, wait, there, I took off my spectrum. Now it's better. Okay, that's why I made a wrong emoji towards Sierra earlier. I pushed it, but the water was there. Anyways, so do you want more details on that, Omar, or can I continue?
A picture, please. Thank you.
You may continue.
Thank you. All right. I did turn the water off for you, though. All right. So, anyways, so I think it's highly irresponsible to be talking about conspiracies without proof. I think we just take a look at what's going on and we go from there. Of course, it could be a conspiracy. Of course, there could be some big thing going on. But you know what? It's almost definitely not. This is just an issue that it brings up issues with the Secret Service and other organizations. But I think I think we need to let those things go until there's some proof. And yeah, that's all. Oh, and one other thing. I despise Trump as a character, like his characteristics. I despise him as a person. But I'll tell you, after he stood up and put his hand up, I was freaking kind of proud. I was like, hell yeah. Even though I really, really dislike him, I was like, man, that moment was amazing. And I know some other people who are actually liberal, and which I'm not, but they're liberal. And they were like, man, yeah, he kind of like, I kind of felt kind of proud for a minute. And it was, so that's cool. Honestly.
So was the moment when he told people to storm the Capitol on January 6th? Were you proud to be?
There's a dynamic. There's a big. People are different. There's different parts of people. Like I can like certain things about people, and I can dislike certain things about people. I don't like how he talked about women. I don't like a lot of things, but I thought that moment was pretty awesome, and it's one of the few things I say nice about the guy. Doesn't dismiss all the other stuff he did.
Got it. Uzi.
Well, with the conspiracy question, it's a epistemological question or problem with our society, and that's really because we have a lack of trust and authority and social trust. And you might say that rooted in COVID or that accelerated during COVID. I don't know. And the second point is, when someone almost gets shot, or when they get shot, they become a martyr. And he sort of had another life. So I do think that helps his candidacy. It makes it somewhat impossible for the blue team to line up and have a strong position. And there's people now on X very vocal, like Bill Ackman, maybe Jamie Dimon runs for president. It's not clear, but I think for 2028. But for now, it's Joe and Trump.
Dallas.
I think the speaker before the last touched on something that was really important. And all we, put conspiracies aside, all we need to think about right now is the truth and the facts that we know. And the facts that we know so far is that the president or former president of the United States was shot by someone at a rally. And, it's disenchanting, but also predictable to see a lot of mainstream news sites put out articles on X and on the news saying president taken off of stage by Secret Service, or president abruptly leaves speech, or like the most disingenuous headlines I've ever seen. And like, again, this is another point. Love or hate the guy, put politics aside. He was shot. If you like him or not, that's what happened. There was an assassination attempt. So maybe for once, just do an honest headline. We know you don't like him, but at least put in the news the guy was shot. Like that just drove me crazy.
Omar.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just clear everybody on the left just hates him so much. It's just gotten a little over the top. It's crossed a line. And I'm somebody who has traditionally been a Democrat. Like I grew up in California. Everybody was a Democrat. First president I voted for was Obama. I've rarely voted for a Republican candidate in my life. But, when Trump got elected, people just kind of lost their minds a little bit. They really hated him. I think he was kind of effective. And that really sort of pissed people off. And you saw something that we haven't really seen in politics before, which is sort of, I think, an intense social pressure. You're a pariah if you support Trump. So I think even some things he were doing that people might have supported, people didn't necessarily want to say it publicly because they would be socially ostracized. In some cases, their business would actually be boycotted or something like that. And then he lost the election. Since then, you've seen the rhetoric get inflamed to, okay, this guy is a threat to our democracy. This guy is going to be the end of our country. And now to the point where someone's actually shot at him. It's and then you look at the reactions. Even reactions from some of my friends, they're all joking, ha ha. Oh, too bad the guy didn't have better aim. We could have finally gotten rid of him. And people saying, "Oh my God, one of his supporters got killed." That's so funny. People actually saying this, like the inhumanity of it, that we've let our politics go to that level where we actually want to see the other side die, and we're actually laughing about them dying. I mean, like the left is my side. I feel like a lot of people say, "Oh, Trump supporter." I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not. I don't even think I'm going to vote for him still, just because he got shot. But you have to say, sort of be able to call out your own side and say, hey, in America, we disagree with each other without killing each other, without wishing harm on each other. We may disagree. We may vote for different candidates, but at the end of the day, we're all still Americans and we don't, wish death upon each other. So, I think this is kind of why some of the media's attacked, them saying, oh, well, he fell. They really hate that this is making him look good. And I think people are, just kind of rolling their eyes at it. They've kind of, it kind of like reminds me of Tesla to some extent, right? When they just kind of want to spin everything one way, not to say everything he's done is so great. There are legitimate criticisms to be had. But clearly, I think the tone of the conversation has crossed a line. And, I think my side, the left, needs to kind of be cognizant of that. Yes, we don't like him, but we need to still respect the democracy. If this is what the people want, then that will be our president. We have to respect the will of the people. And the way to defeat him is to put a better candidate out. We don't have any good candidates. Our candidates all suck. Okay? Our candidate that we're running doesn't even know where he is. Everyone can clearly see he's too old. He's not going to last another 4 years. He looks like a zombie. And, people are getting upset at me for pointing this out. This isn't the Democratic Party I joined with Obama. I mean, that guy was eloquent. He could explain what he was saying. This is not the same party that I joined. And, I kind of just feel like I have to call that out.
Thank you. Scott.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Long time since I spoke on the space. Just so a story about during the event, my daughter's baby shower was going on. We had about 50 people at our house. And my dad and I were sitting together, and he, is skeptical of X and all this. And I said, "Look at they just tried to assassinate Trump." And he's like, "What are you talking about? I didn't get any notifications for that." And I said, "Look, I've got like 3 or 4. No, look at the video. There's a live video," and just stuff started coming out on X. And I'm just so proud of the fact that we have an opportunity to see like the truth live now. And so he downloaded the app right away. He's like, "Okay, who should I follow?" And I was like, "Well, obviously me, and then a few other news, I said, definitely don't follow that Yaman guy, but there was we had a minute there, and then he's been like, hey, sharing things with me on X, like, look what I saw, and you know, I was very impressed with the fact that, you know, we now have free speech platform. You know, going back to the topic there, just I think that you guys, as a Canadian, you know, I'm not going to vote for either party. So just so you know, I have no horse in this race. But watching the events unfold, you know, it's pretty obvious that things have gotten way too toxic. And we have people calling for things like that here. They just hate Justin Trudeau and want to say things about Justin Trudeau. And we're like, look, you can't let it get to this point. You know, it's a conversation. You know, there's data. You know, both presidents have really sucked. So that doesn't mean you should kill them. You know, like there's a very important fine line to being strong in your opinion and swaying those around you to agree with you, and then, you know, taking things into your own hands. So I just think that this entire situation, and also here in Canada, we have a very important election coming up. This should just encourage us to not just sit there and watch it happen. We should get involved. We should sway people to our opinion, or we should hear their opinions, and we should do it peaceably. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott. My good life.
I guess the point I'd like to make is, growing up, I grew up in a very conservative Christian household, going to church every day on Sunday type of thing, which is very much aligned to the Republican Party, or at least many of their demographic and their voter base aligned to Christian values. And I still can't understand how what they teach and what they profess, they can look past that to vote for a candidate that clearly demonstrates none of those qualities. You know, I'm a parent, I'm a husband. The guy was having sex with a porn star while his wife was, you know, nursing their infant son. I think his character, who he is, what he represents, is truly appalling. And at least for me, I can never look past that. It's not about the issues. It's, you know, it's about the person at the end of the day that's leading our country. And the fact that so many of his voter base does look past their Christian values to vote for him, I mean, it's beyond crazy to me. And that's all I want to say. But
humanities.
Yeah, I'm older. I have kids that are in their mid-20s, and I remember taking a trip with them recently where we were talking about the way things used to be, and they were just, their jaws dropped. They were astounded. Told them that we had 300 baud modem when I started, and you know, you could hear it chime back and forth, and they just couldn't believe it. And one of the things, eventually it came up, the media, and I said, you know, there was a time in America where the news actually reported news with sources and facts, and there was no speculation, there was no propaganda, they weren't opinion pieces on the nightly news. It was actual facts. And if they made a mistake, they would come back on the next night and apologize. If they made a mistake in the newspaper, they'd reprint mistakes and not on the back page. And I just don't know how we got to the point to where our media is so biased. And if you're on the side that you appreciate the media, try to be on the other side of that and try to understand how that would feel for you, because the tables do turn and they're going to turn eventually. And I don't want it for one side or the other. I want unbiased, good media. I want to go back to what we had, not what we have today. Thanks.
Thank you. Lightspread.
I want to say something about the gentleman earlier was talking about he didn't understand why Trump people, if they're good Christian values, why they could vote for him. I think what you need to do is take a look at why they can't vote for Biden. What is it that Biden's doing and the Democratic Party is doing to create the push for people to go to the other side? There's something very wrong there. And try to understand them, then don't, instead of criticizing because they're voting for Trump. Trump's their only choice, basically. Well, there is Robert Kennedy, and I'm voting for him, by the way. But think about what they are enduring and what they're fighting for and what they believe, and try to bridge that gap by coming to a compromise.
West Hicks and then Captain.
Yeah, I think it was My Good Life that said this earlier, but had mentioned something about will Republicans accept the outcome of this election? And I'm a conservative. I don't speak for all conservatives or Republicans, of course, but what he said really didn't connect with what I think most people feel is the main issue, or at least one of them, which is without voter ID, there's a lack of integrity in the system. And that at its core is so problematic that regardless of outcome, there seems to be a significant issue with the way that we have elections in this country.
Captain?
My experience is very similar to Omar's, except probably for many more years. The Democratic Party, has kind of failed here in California, and at the same time, I wouldn't place a vote for Trump as a Democrat, but I wouldn't vote for Biden. But I do have some experience with Trump in the '90s, doing a business deal with him in New York. So back then, I kind of wondered if the guy would ever get into a political position, and hope that he didn't, knowing the dealings that I had there. But here we are today, and it, like most people say, it is kind of a mess on both sides.
Dallas.
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting there. I mean, someone touched on it earlier. Like, if you're not really a political person, it's kind of a lesser of two evils type of situation. And I do think there will be a record number of people in this election, more than any other, where there's an abstaining to vote.
Okay, so you don't think the turnout is going to be very high in this election? All right. Are we? Do we get it out of our systems? It's a very important topic. I don't mean to minimize it, but this is a Tesla space, and I want to kind of keep it on point a little bit. So maybe we can pivot to Tesla with a question for Omar, and the question is: does the attempt on Trump, the assassination attempt on Trump, does it make you feel more worried about Elon? Elon has increased his security in recent years as opposed to previous years. Do you think more is needed?
I think he'll be fine. But he's got security. Like, I wouldn't interview him. He's got a ton of security, so I'm sure he'll be okay. I think this election is so much like the South Park episode, douche versus a turd. Giant douche versus turd sandwich. And the one side's going, how can we have a giant douche as our school mascot? The other side's like, really? You want a turd sandwich? And yeah, just go rewatch that one. It pretty much sums up this election.
All right. Well, let's welcome my new follower, Dan O'Dowd. Dan, how are you?
Good.
So 12.4, let's talk about FSD, or unless if you want to share any views on the events of the weekend. Would you like to?
No.
Okay, FSD. 12.4.3 is rolling out. It's now with 10% of the North American fleet, and Tesla is testing 12.5 in front of Chuck Cook's house. The experience with FSD appears to be improving. Miles per intervention. We don't really have yet data on 12.4.3, but over the last 3 years, it's increased. But you're not convinced, right? Any change to your views in recent months since we last talked?
Not materially. I thought I understood that 12.4 is out, and we're now going straight to 12.5.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we have that confirmation, Omar. I think
it's on
earlier,
about 10% of the fleet. So we still need to see it go out to most of the cars, hopefully this week.
Yeah. Dan, what do you?
So there is going to be a 12.4.3 continuing, or we're not just going to 12.5?
12.4.3, 12.4.4. 12.5, I would probably expect 2 to 4 weeks to start rolling out widely to most customers.
But is 12.4.3 going to continue to go out?
I think it should. It's looking pretty good in my testing this weekend, so I would expect them to continue to roll out 12.4 this week.
Okay. Dan, any any change to your view that Tesla cannot get there without LiDAR, with vision cameras only?
Well, I don't think that's truly my, my full position on that. I mean, the current issue on 12.4 is that months ago, Elon said 12.4 is 5 times longer miles per disengagement. And he said it in the present tense. If he was thinking, oh, we hope that it will be, then he could say that, but that's not what he said. And then he said, every 2 weeks, a major improvement after that. Well, here we are months later, and 12.4 is stalled, and 12.4.2 is a disaster. 12.4.3, I don't know. We haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it yet. But it's not what he said. I mean, the issue is that there's this expectation that there's going to be this exponential growth, this huge improvement in miles per disengagement. Well, we're in the noise. Just look at the people measuring disengagements. It's up, it's down, it's around. A new version comes out, it drops down. A new version goes up. The net isn't up by much, if it's up at all. And we need to get not to hundreds of miles per disengagement, but to tens of thousands of miles. And it's just not getting there. I mean, it's not even coming close to getting there. That's sort of the issue.
Okay.
On
Let me
LiDAR,
ask you something. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to comment on LiDAR. My position isn't that it can't get there without LiDAR. I don't know that you can't make I'm not saying that LiDAR is required. It may not be. That's to be proven. Somebody has to do it. My point, which I stated, is all the people who have done it built a level 4 system that has nobody in the driver's seat and drives for thousands and tens of hundreds of thousands of miles. They all use LiDAR, and that includes all the Chinese companies. They just put 1,000 new robo-taxis in Wuhan in the last few days. So China's putting them in everywhere. They're coming here, and they're in Austin now. We're all over. It's all over Silicon Valley, all over LA. People I know in LA say they're seeing them everywhere now. So the Waymos, that is. So that's my statement. It's not a statement that you can't do it. It's a statement that everybody who has succeeded did it that way. Maybe there's a way to do it another way. I'm not going to argue that. I can't even prove that. I can't prove that you can't do it with cameras. It's just it hasn't succeeded. Tesla has not succeeded. It's been 8 years. We've been on this AI thing for 6, I think, maybe 7. And if it's getting better, it's getting better at a very slow pace. And when it's going to reach the levels it needs to reach to be a robotaxi is years and years away, if ever.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dan probably must not have 12.4 on his car. I'm going to post some videos later today of me driving it around Los Angeles yesterday, looking at some houses. I did 70 miles across Los Angeles, 7 drives, and every single one was zero intervention. And not only that, it was smooth, it was comfortable, it drives better than a Waymo. So I think really the combination of miles per intervention increasing with the new driver monitoring system, which really makes it so the user can't use their phone, is going to be a significant safety improvement for our roads. If people are actually looking at the road as the system ensures, rather than on their phone driving manually, I think that alone is going to materially improve the crash rates. So, Dan may be right that it could take several more years of iteration to get to robotaxi. But I think he's also not realizing right that it could take several more years of iteration to get to robotaxi. But I think he's also not realizing how rapid the progress is. When people get 12.4, I think they are going to see far more zero intervention drives because that's what I'm seeing.
Dallas.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I saw a thing that, he said 70 miles. I think that people are now claiming that it's at 100 and some miles per disengagement. That's more than 70. I mean, yes, we all across San Francisco. It's not, that's my point. It isn't really a materially greater improvement, more miles per disengagement. If it is more, it's not a lot more. And 70 is totally inadequate, not even close to it. It needs to be 100 times that. You've got to be able to do that 100 days in a row, maybe 1,000 days in a row before you've even reached the level of a human driver.
Well, so first off, it's not just 70 miles. That's just how much I drove. So it's actually much higher than 70. I didn't drive long enough to actually have an intervention. But you're seeing essentially, you have to really be careful when you look at the data, right? If you're looking at overall, compared to this type of driving I was doing through Los Angeles, when the 405 is jam packed and people are doing crazy things and cutting ahead of you, this was some of the most challenging driving scenarios. And, to say it hasn't improved and I've always been getting zero intervention drives is just inaccurate. In version 10, you'd rarely have a completely zero touch drive at all. You would sometimes have zero disengagement drives where you don't turn the system off, but you'd often be adjusting the speed or pressing the accelerator or stuff like that. I've never seen it, what it can do now, where it's hands-free, it does the entire drive, and I don't touch anything. I don't touch the speed scroll wheel, I don't touch the accelerator pedal. It does the entire drive from curb to curb, even parking itself after. And it's a big improvement even from 12.3.
Good. Dan, let me ask you something. So Tesla has a robotaxi unveil event that's going to happen, maybe not on 8/8 at this point, but sometime in the future, Tesla will unveil the robotaxi. Seeing what on that presentation would change your mind that Tesla will get there eventually and maybe in the next few years? Seeing what on that event, if Tesla shares what data, if Elon says what, would you change your mind?
Well, okay. Elon gets in the back of the car. Nobody sitting in the front. No remote drivers. He punches into destination, and drives all over wherever where is it? I don't know where they unveil Austin or something like that. Right. I mean that it can actually drive itself without a driver. That's the test, and I that's not going to happen on August 8th. That's gonna what we're going to see there is a a prototype. It's going to be what the car is going to look like without a steering wheel. But that's not going to be a robotaxi. I mean, we drove it last week, right? It's not anywhere close, and it's not going to suddenly happen in 2 months that they've solved all the problems that they haven't been able to solve for so many years. So
Okay, and your position is Tesla should stop the development and pull it off the streets, right? FSD.
yes.
Okay. Now, seeing what's on that day on that presentation, if Tesla, for example, shares a specific data points, if they shared it, you would change your view that Tesla should pull FSD off the streets today. Like, for example, if they say we tested it over billions of miles, and here is the safety critical intervention per mile, or here's the accident data versus human-driven vehicles, would lead you to change your mind.
I can't imagine anything they would say, because actually when they do their safety report, we looked at the safety report carefully and we put out a note on this. They said, well, we have less accidents on full self-driving or autopilot than we do a human driver. And they said, well, we have this many accidents according to the government, just regular drivers, and this many accidents on Tesla. Well, they weren't using the same statistics. Tesla was counting only airbag deployments. The government was counting all police reports. NHTSA did a test and said you have to multiply the Tesla's number by more than 5.5 to get a fair number. Their numbers you can't trust them, but I could trust somebody else. I mean, if Consumer Reports or somebody like that took a car out and drove it for 10,000 miles all over the country, and not just on freeways, straight long freeways, but full mixture of driving, and they said it worked great, I might well believe them. Or if we did a test, like Omar can get in the car and, well, let's see, we could do Elon's test that he said he was going to be able to do by the end of 2017. I'll get in my car at my house or something in Los Angeles. It will drive me all the way to Times Square, drop me off in Times Square, park itself. And no human touches the controls anywhere along the way. Right. That was what he said he could do by the end of 2017. But that didn't happen. That would be pretty good. Can it do the painted black? We did a painted black. We went out there and tried to do the same route. It can't do it today. It can't do the painted black route. Can it do that? That would help. That's not enough because it should have been able to do that by now. But yeah, just show it to me actually going
Okay.
tens of thousands of miles without having an intervention.
Omar, any thoughts on what Dan said so far?
Yeah, I think it's funny that he mentioned seeing a demo.
I lost you.
Yeah, I think Omar's in connection issues today.
I missed the last minute, whatever was said.
Yeah, that's it. We couldn't hear it either. That's fine. Mishka.
So I wanted to ask you, Dan, on what you would consider. I want to ask you what you would consider the basic, I guess you could say, like use on the use case that I have, to where I was able to drive my vehicle from Ann Arbor, Michigan, all the way to Peoria, Illinois. Now actually 3 trips on 12.4.3, completely hands-free. With yesterday actually being a really, really, really big storm while driving there, and the car did everything with me having zero interventions on the car. Now, I know that you're saying that technically, you want for a test where Elon sits in the back and isn't touching the wheel, there's zero intervention. But wouldn't me driving the car as a consumer and as in, a vehicle owner now for 3 months for my Model X, if my car is able to do that, wouldn't there be hundreds of others, if not thousands of other full self-driving users that can do the same thing completely hands-free? Is that not considered full self-driving? Is that not, at the very least closer to what Elon has promised? And is this not a clear demonstration of progress? Because I know 12.3.
Got another dropout.
Yeah, Dan.
Because
Go ahead, Dan. Dan, go ahead.
I got a dropout there for the last 30 seconds. What, I didn't hear the end of his question. Or
I don't think anyone heard it. I mean, yeah, when people come up to speaker board, especially when we have speakers with large followings, please keep your question to 10 words or fewer and keep it succinct. Otherwise, people will fall. They won't follow your question. Dallas, go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, Dan, I wanted to touch on a question for you about like real world driving, not just address to address or destination to destination. Like, you know, you go to Chick-fil-A and the guy says, "Can you go over to that side a little bit?" Like, that's real life, like, hey, cop pulls you over. I need you to pull over right there. Where's the connection from vehicle to human? That's my question.
well, there are lots of problems. It doesn't know what an ambulance is. It doesn't know that it's supposed to pull over when there's an ambulance or a fire truck. It just keeps going. It just thinks it's just another truck. School buses, what we've been hammering about. Oh, on August 8th, show me that it doesn't go past a school bus with the red lights flashing. Come on, we've been hammering on this for a year and a half. How can it be a robotaxi in 2 months if it just sees a school bus and just blows right past it without slowing down? That's crazy. When is that going to be put in? I've got like 8 or 10 critical vulnerabilities or failures, defects that haven't been worked on. Will they have them by August 8th or whenever the official date is? I doubt it. I keep asking for it. It's the easiest thing in my mind. Like, teach it what a school bus is. Just label it to death. That's a school bus. And don't go past it when lights are flashing.
Sierra.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to that. Hi, Dan. I'm on 12.3.6. I have a Model Y. Had it for 3 months. I have on 2 occasions had my vehicle on FSD yield to emergency vehicles and pull over to the right. And I've also, on more than 3 occasions, had it stop for a school bus that had their stop sign out that was like in an oncoming lane of traffic. So the school bus facing me with their lights flashing and the stop sign out, and my car stopped just like I would and waited until the stop sign went down and the bus moved. So perhaps vision recognition is getting better, but I've not experienced any failures in those incidents.
Well, we still have verified it on 12.3. We haven't tried 12.4 yet, but at least in 12.3, it doesn't even have a microphone hooked up to the to the system, so it could hear a siren.
Okay, Omar.
Just to reiterate, that was on 12. I'm on 12.3.6.
Right.
Omar.
We've got that, and we've tested that.
Okay.
And we still see it do those things.
Yeah, so Dan said it's not going to be a robo-taxi in 2 months. It's important to note this is a unveil of the vehicle. It's a demo.
They're not actually going to be launching a robotaxi service on the date of the vehicle unveil. This is just them showing off their new car, which doesn't have manual controls. The FSD progress will continue, and as we've said, miles per intervention are growing very fast. And then, that's it.
I agree. I mean, that's what I think. It's just going to be a vehicle. It's going to be, what it looks like, not.
Well,
not
it looks like
the
Omar
software.
and Dan agree, so we can end the space here. Thank you very much, everyone. Fix it or go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Evan. Yeah, so most of you guys know, like, I've been very critical of 12.3.6 on my drives. Like, it's been just horrific in my area. I got 12.4.3 about 5-6 days ago now. I was just amazed. I mean, it's not perfect, but from what I'm experiencing, I had now 4 drives over 33 miles. 3 of them were perfect. I had 1 critical disengagement on the last one. It was trying to get onto the highway with the traffic meter right. It started going and it slammed on its brakes again, so I'll post that shortly. But I mean, it's a huge improvement from what I'm seeing. It's not perfect. I had to give it a couple of assists here with acceleration here and there, like I posted on the last video, but it's like, to me, it's night and day. So again, it's not there yet, but it's night and day from 12.3.6.
Great. Any question?
But on the other hand, in 33 miles, you had a disengagement. That's not good. I mean, it's got to be thousands, 10,000 miles between disengagement to be able to equal a human being, just an ordinary average person.
Oh yeah, like, I mean,
we're
even
nowhere
on
near.
my first drive that I had to 33 miles, like, it stopped at a red light. It was making a right turn. I posted this video on it. And then we got a green arrow to go right, but it didn't go. So I got the honk horn. I mean, I gave it a little bit of gas. It wasn't perfect. There was no disengagements, but on the 4th 33-mile ride, I finally had a disengagement. But it's like I said, it's not perfect, but it's so much better than 12.3.6. Like, I mean, when I say night and day, it's night and day.
Omar?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's just so smooth, so comfortable, so human-like. Having spent a lot of time in Waymo and a lot of time in Tesla, their driving style, the smoothness, the way they just execute really human driving maneuvers seems to be leapfrogging Waymo. And I believe they're going to leapfrog them in miles per intervention as well. Dan's right that it needs to become much, much better to be a robotaxi, and nobody's trying to make it a robotaxi until it's that good. But all these people going around the country and finding these issues, finding these failure cases, is what's allowing us to train a model that can take you around Los Angeles for an entire day without an intervention now. And this is just getting started. We haven't even looked at the power of hardware 4. They're training a 5 times larger model. We're adding tons of compute in Giga Texas. This is just going to continue to get better and better, and I can't believe how well it's already performing.
Didn't you just post a video yesterday showing 12.4.3 driving on the wrong side of the road?
I did, yeah. But most of the drives were
Well,
zero intervention.
again,
That was pretty rare.
yeah, but still, we're talking about hundreds of miles of driving, and then you get one dumb thing. That's what we keep talking about.
I don't disagree with you. You're right. That is
right.
an accurate assessment of what it is today.
All right. So what we agree on the past, that like version 11 is unsafe and should be taken off the road immediately. Right? That was supposed to be super great, and now we have maybe it goes 100 miles before it does something dumb. The only thing, and we both agree, it's like 100 times better to get to a robotaxi. All you're saying is that you think it's getting there really rapidly, and I'm saying it's taken a long, long time, and it's still only at a few hundred miles. When does it get to a few thousand? I don't know, a year or 2 years or something, and that's still not enough to take the person out of the seat, to take the driver out of the seat. That's our disagreement. I think it's years and years away.
Well, version 11 was amazing at the time, of course. Now it looks like a piece of junk compared to version 12. And I think, we can argue about how fast it's going to take. There is a legitimate discussion to be had there. Nobody knows, of course, how long it's going to take. I'd like it to be fast. Others who are maybe bearish on Tesla hope it's going to be slow. But as a customer, I've got the best ADAS system on the market. I can press a button, let go of the wheel, and it'll navigate me around the city. It'll take me pretty much anywhere I want. And it's getting better for free. It just keeps improving. So as a customer, am pretty happy. If it achieves a high degree of reliability faster, I'll be even happier. But even if it continued to improve very slowly, until there's something better on the market, this is still indispensable for me.
Machine.
Well, this driving, I mean, I find just driving to be give me PTSD. I mean, it grabs the wheel. It's not, I don't know, weeks ago, but we're just driving down the road and there's another car coming the other way, 2-lane road. It just cut right in
Yeah.
front of it.
Okay.
We actually published a series of videos. We discovered a space, you know, a road where it did that consistently. It tried to cut in front of oncoming traffic every single time. The problem is, I mean, people who say it's smooth, fine, but you do have to be watching every single second. And if you're
Yeah.
not, something terrible will happen.
Okay.
And that means you have to be at alert all the time. It's not
Okay.
relaxing,
Thank you, Dan.
it's anti-relaxing.
Thank you. Got it. Machine.
Dan, I mean, I agree with the sentiment that we may be a little bit away from robotaxi level, but even at the current level, which clearly is not robotaxi, you know, there's I think convincing or compelling evidence that as an L2 assist, that it aids in the users not getting into accidents versus not having it. I mean, I believe statistically Tesla's not doing the perfect proper control statistical criteria, but I do believe it's showing a reduction in accidents. So why are you so worried about this technology if it being in the hands of customers is actually helping reduce accidents?
I don't believe that that's true. All the statistics that Tesla published were phony. And we tried to give it a driving test. We hired a driving instructor who gives people tests, and we took it out for a drive. This was a couple months ago, but at the time it failed the test. It did 3 errors that the instructor said would cause you to not get your license. What else did he say? He said I'd retire if I had to do this every day with a driver this bad. Um, it is not a better driver, even with a supervisor. It does crazy things. It stops in the middle of the road from time to time. It stops on railroad tracks. It does what I said. It turns the wheel to the left into oncoming traffic, and everybody reports this. Why can't they fix this? I don't understand. If I was running that team, that would have been priority number 1, not getting Elon's commute best. I'd be fixing that. I'd be fixing not running over kids in crosswalks and not going past school buses. They haven't even started on these problems. I don't understand why they haven't done that. And that leaves us with the current state of affairs, which is it's not helping. It is not better driver when there's a supervisor. It's a worse driver because it keeps doing these crazy things, and you
Okay.
have to be there every second watching it. And that doesn't make it be fun or relaxing. It makes it
Okay.
be
Thank you.
nervous.
Machine.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned that the statistics aren't something that you thought were scientifically valid, but do you have clear evidence to the contrary? Because you seem to be asserting with confidence that statistically L2 assist FSD makes a driver worse. And I don't believe you actually have that statistical evidence. And you have anecdote about some driver and doing some tests, but that's anecdote. And I believe those tests are real. I just don't believe they show you a full statistical picture. So I believe we're left with lack of clarity. So I just confused how you can be so confident.
Well, first, lack of clarity means should come off the road because you can't demonstrate that it is better. It should not be allowed on the road, at least not in production quantity. I mean, yeah, sure, a few drivers for testing, but not as a production product, 400,000 in the field at least. If you can't demonstrate it is safer, it should not be on the road. That's the correct standard. That's
Okay.
what. Otherwise, it's like any nutcase who thinks anything he does isn't dangerous, and you can't prove it. But as
Okay.
to
Machine.
statistics, I do have a little bit, which we have published before, which is before the recent changes caused by the free trial. But if you go back before the free trial, if you count up the number of miles driven by FSD, which was being published every month, and you count up the number of FSD full FSD purchases, you find that they were driving only, I forget what the number is, like the 100 miles a month or something like that. And it means they weren't, that people were not driving it all the time. The people who bought it and paid major amount of money for that software were not using it. I have plenty of anecdotes of people I know who don't use it. They said, yeah, I tried it, and it worked great for a few days, and then it did something crazy. And then I got worried about it and I didn't want to do it. I turn it on every now and then and try it. But the statistic is that only about 15% of the time that people had the full self-driving software available to them did they turn it on. 85% of the time they didn't. I think that's a
Machine
pretty
and an
strong
Omar.
indication.
Machine.
So I'm curious how you differentiate between the L2 system of Tesla versus every other automaker who has a Mobileye system of their own, which also certainly is not proven to be safer than a human as an assist. So why are you focused on Tesla and not on these other L2 assist versions?
Well, those systems, I mean, I am not stating a strong opinion. We've done a little bit of testing on them, but not a lot. But also, they don't tell people it's called full self-driving. They call it something else, Blue Cruise or something like that. So they don't advertise it. Secondly, as far as I know, they don't jerk the wheel to the left and into oncoming traffic. Um, their driver monitoring systems. We did test this. Their driver monitoring systems are really good. Tesla's is really terrible. I mean, we demonstrated you could put a teddy bear in the driver's seat and it would say that there was a competent driver there. It is very, very poor quality. We did a whole bunch of videos on this showing how you can easily trick full self-driving into thinking that you are alert when you're not. You can be sleeping, you can be looking out the window, all sorts of things. I know it does sometimes catch you when you do the wrong thing, but it also fails to catch many, many really terrible, or you're doing really the worst thing in the world. You're just not looking at the screen, at the out the windshield. You're just looking in some completely different direction. The other systems were actually pretty good. We tested Ford and GM, and their driver monitoring systems were very strict and quite good. And watch our videos. We show exactly the same test done using exactly the same mechanism with us and using Ford and GM and Tesla. And Tesla's really fails miserably
Okay, Omar.
check the driver.
Yeah, I think the issue with a lot of Dan's arguments is they're just really out of date, especially when you look at 12.4. I would say go get that driver again, the driving school guy, and have him check out 12.4 when you get it on your
Get me
car.
12. Can you get me 12.4? I mean, we're in the 90% that don't have
Sure,
it.
I'll have him send it
I
to you
can't
right
do it.
away. But have him
there you
test
go.
have him test it again, and I mean it's
We
starting to just drive like a professional chauffeur, like way better. I see you do things and I go, no way a new driver could pull off a move like that. It's just so experienced, so smooth. It's clearly going from much worse than a human to now much better than a human. And you
So-
talk about the driver monitoring system. There's an all new driver monitoring system in 12.4 as well. And I think it's the best driver monitoring system in the world. So this is going to be a huge, huge improvement for road safety. We all know how distracted driving kills. This is a major fight against distracted driving, and that's super exciting. So when evaluating whether it's safer, you really have to look at it from sort of two angles. One, you have to look at it from the angle of your typical level 2 lane keeping assist, such as Tesla Basic Autopilot or Mobileye or other ADAS systems, which are actually built on Green Hill Software's platform, which your company is actually participating in selling. This software is obviously much more advanced than those level 2 systems. It can handle more obstacles itself rather than crashing and requiring an intervention. So I think it's an improvement in road safety in that way. And when you just sort of think about it, you look at how the thing drives and you look at how people drive Teslas manually, how I drive a Tesla manually, for example. And the system is just making much more conservative, much less crazy driving maneuvers. And the attention monitoring system, I think when you compare to your average driver driving around while using their phone, compared to an FSD driver who can't use their phone or look at the screen and has to pay attention to the road, I think just that driver monitoring system alone will account for a significant reduction in crashes, notwithstanding what the performance of FSD is.
Okay, Machine.
Yeah, you mentioned that only a Tesla would jerk the wheel, but you're right, because I believe the other systems just wouldn't turn the wheel at all when the road curves, and it just runs you off the road. So I don't know if that's a good thing either. And I'm just curious if you had, ignoring the driver monitoring part. I mean, I get that part. If you had your child or grandchild strapped in there and had this thing drive them around, which system would you choose that you thought would do the best? A Tesla, a Blue Cruise, I don't even know the name of the other ones, ProPilot. And also, the second part of that, if Tesla changed their name from FSD to Red Pilot, would you be happy?
Well, changing the name, not if it didn't change the behavior. It's not just about the name. And you said, which would I become? None of the ones you mentioned, I certainly wouldn't with the Ford or GM system, but a Waymo, I'd put my grandchild, my new grandchild in the back seat and say, take him for a ride. Sure. I wouldn't do that with any of those other systems, with the Ford or GM or Tesla system. That's really the distinction. L4 means you'd put your grandson or your grandmother in the back seat and say, I'm confident you'll make it to the other side.
My good life.
I think, interestingly enough, the point that I was going to come up here and make was, I think ultimately this comes down to trust and belief, and in my mind, character of the person that's leading Tesla, which I don't think is very high. I think maybe Tesla could get there, but right now, I don't believe a word that comes out of Elon's mouth, because in my mind, he's lied. He's done numerous questionable, unethical things throughout his career, throughout his life, throughout his personal life, to not give me any trust in the individual himself. And I think that's going to be the hardest thing for him to get past, is what's ultimately going to give regulators, give the American public trust in any system that he tries to put forward.
Omar?
Yeah, I think my good life is letting his political bias show a little bit here. The power of FSD is not that it is supposed to be reliable to the point of being driverless today. By bringing this technology to the masses, by bringing it to any ordinary car, they're preventing people from getting cars. They're preventing crashes every day. Things like automatic emergency braking, forward collision warning, lane departure avoidance. What they've done has saved people's lives. There are people who've fallen asleep behind the wheel because they were drunk, and instead of crashing and killing themselves and someone else, they just were arrested. So, I mean, it's easy to criticize, especially if you're coming at this from a political lens and saying Elon bad. But the fact is, the development of this technology has saved lives. And if they continue improving miles per intervention at the rate that we're seeing, they continue to increase compute, they continue to increase performance, they have the chance to really bring level 4 reliability to the masses long term, and to do it with a cost structure that can really get this installed on millions of cars. So you may not like him, but I think the technology just kind of speaks for itself.
Omar, let me ask you in a different way. Maybe taking out that political bias, and my good life has been bearish on the stock and the company for a long time, even before these recent political discussions. But if we can reword the question, do you think the fact that Elon has promised certain things and it's just been delayed on the FSD front, especially, is impacting FSD take rate today? Do you think it would have been higher if some of these statements weren't made in the past?
It's possible that it could have had some negative impact, but ultimately what matters is what you ship, right? The other guys, they didn't promise anything, but they didn't ship anything either. Elon said, oh, we're going to make these things driverless. They're not driverless yet, but they've shipped something that's far more advanced than anything else on the market. So go ahead and make fun of him, call him a liar, whatever. I'm going to use the product.
Dallas?
I kind of think it's a one-horse race right now. I know people have talked about GM and Ford and stuff, but with the the data gap, if you will, between Tesla and the rest of the crew, I think a lot of companies have resorted to going, okay, we'll just wait, let you figure it out, and pay you in licensing later on. I also want to reiterate, I think we're in a very early stage of this. I know we live in a world where we want things yesterday, but this technology is unbelievable, and we're in a very early stage of it. And for how early we are in it, we're seeing some unbelievable results. So I think people need to be a little more patient and just take, in the fact that we're getting to see one of the coolest technological evolutions in a long time.
Luce.
Hello, everybody. So I wanted to ask Dan, why between all FSD users, there aren't more people wanting to remove it from the roads?
There aren't. I think most people don't have any idea about it. That is about the problems. They think it works great. They hear from you and Omar and the rest of the crew how wonderful and great it is and awesome technology. And even Elon says it. Elon says it's going to be full self-driving. It is full self-driving, or it will be really soon. I mean, he's been saying that for 10 years now. Within 6 months or so, we're going to have full self-driving. So I think most people think that it does it, that it works, that it's good. In fact, the one thing I've said after I say to people all the problems it has, every time I take someone for a drive and we drive around for a while at the end, and I do, to places we know it doesn't work. That's not a random drive, but taking it to places that we have found it does really the wrong thing. And we drive them around, and every time they get out, they say to me, like, "That's terrible." I said, "Well, I told you that." I said, "No, no, no, it's worse than you said." I said, "Well, I thought it told you it was pretty bad." And they said, "Yeah, that's true, but they got their life, in front of their eyes, flashing in front of their eyes, because they saw an accident they were about to be in, and that was saved at the last second." Something I pointed this out before. I think there are people who have, like, that they're different and that they like jumping out of airplanes because, like, nothing in life is exciting unless it's really crazy. And then there's people more like me who are pretty staid people who are not, who don't go out of their way. I don't jump out of airplanes or ride motorcycles or all those other things. I accept that there are people that are different than me. They are much more risk tolerant than me, and I'm on the other end. That's why I write software for nuclear weapons. We've got to be real careful and not make mistakes.
Luce.
And I think that's somewhat of the difference of opinions here about the ordinary person is frightened seriously, severely, when they see their car almost get into a crash.
Okay, Luce.
Psychological.
Yeah, so I asked between FSD users, not the people you will try FSD or you will tell about FSD. Between FSD users, why we don't see many people wanting to remove it from the roads from FSD users?
Well, the people who bought it are hoping that it's going to work real soon now because Elon said so. I mean, he told everybody every 6 months or so that it's going to be available. It really is going to work this time. You just heard Omar say it about this 12.4.2. What was it you said? It was tearing your soul apart because of the problems it had. Okay, now we have a dot one update, and now it's wonderful and great and awesome. In 2 months, is it going to be terrible as people actually try it in lots of places and really give it a run for it? And then it's going to start, people are going to start sealing the really big things. Okay, it works great for 3 days, but
Yeah,
in 2 months, it doesn't work.
yeah,
so well.
Luce, that's a really good question. You asked a really good question. If this software were so dangerous to the public, we would see among the 500,000 people who purchased and subscribed to it, we would see way more people asking for it to be removed.
Asking for what?
To be removed. Omar?
Well, why do you want to get removed? You can't get your money back. People have tried that. They tried to say, okay, I'll give
No,
you.
I mean, among the 500,000 people, there would be more people asking for regulators and coming out as, I guess, as opposed to short sellers or people with maybe other conflicts of interest asking for it. Omar.
Yeah, it's funny to hear Dan kind of dramatize the situation. Obviously, if you take people to places where there's an issue, you're going to misrepresent the situation. people are using this because the rate at which those things are happening is very, very low and disappearing fast. So in the real world, what happens is when you have a spot where you know that there's going to be an issue, instead of trying to cause a crash on purpose to mislead people, you just take over ahead of time and you don't let it do that. So people are not getting in these near crash experiences all the time. I mean, look, if people are afraid of it, then they can drive manually. If they want to use it, then it's there for them to use. And it'll continue to get better. You know, maybe eventually it can be used in a driverless setting, but it's just there if people want it. If you're afraid of it, you don't need to use it. NHTSA has listened to you. You know, you've gone to NHTSA, you've gone to regulators, you've made this case. They've looked at the data and they've determined that this is a net positive to have on the road. And your sort of dramatization of the situation is really couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, this thing just does almost every drive perfectly now. And looking forward at the tech we have coming, a 5 times bigger model, 50,000 new GPUs, the inference power of hardware 4 that we haven't even started to tap into yet, 4 times the input resolution on the images with the hardware 4 cameras. It's going to continue to get a lot better. So, you know, this idea that people are going to be getting in near crashes all the time, it's not really the case. And it, you know, seems like you're really just kind of trying to make it look worse than it is when you give people these rides.
Hey Dan, we have a good comment in. Are you on the East Coast or the West Coast, right, Dan?
West Coast, California.
Oh, okay. Well, if you ever make it to Maryland, Dana, who is one of the beta testers, who's very active on X, and she posts very good videos. She has 12.4, and maybe we can get you into a 12.4 to test it in person. And maybe if you're on the West Coast, maybe Omar can give you a ride.
Sure. I mean, we can do it any time.
Yeah,
but yeah,
that could be
we'll
fun.
get it. We just happen to be on the end of the list. You know, every time a release comes out, I could understand that they want it to be as good as possible before they ship it to us.
Hey, I'm in LA right now. I'll come over tomorrow with my Model 3. We can go for a ride. Could make a good YouTube video.
We can go for a ride.
All right, cool.
Wow, this is bringing tears to my eyes. You guys are agreeing on everything. We're now getting in the same car for the first time ever.
Wait, okay, let me check my schedule. Tomorrow, that might be an issue.
Well, it doesn't have to be tomorrow. We can work it out later.
All right, that's good. Fine.
Machine, are you in for this too?
You know, if we can, Dan, Santa Barbara, right?
Yep.
Do you happen to have a Popeye's chicken there?
I don't know.
I would go if there was one.
Okay, we'll find out.
Habib?
Hey, can I ask Dan a question not related to FSD?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Dan. Actually, this may kind of sound like a sarcastic question, but it's not at all. Could you just comment about those Tesla Roadsters that you got? Like, what's your experience been? I've been interested in looking at one myself. Do you have to redo the battery packs on them, or how's that project going?
Right to the bit. I mean, I have 2 Roadsters that I use, you know, which are my daily driver cars. I have 3 more, but they're museum pieces. They're untouched, straight from the factory, never registered Roadsters. And in my mind, they're museum pieces, right? Someday, when all cars are electric, you know, 30 years from now or 50, whenever the hell that is, everybody will look back and say, well, all cars derived from the Roadster. That was the first production car that you could actually go out and buy. You know, there's an EV1 and whatever. You never owned it. It's just given to people to try it out. But that's the first electric car, and I bought one at the time. But you know, of course, my cars have been used, and as of the others. But I'm not aware of any other factory fresh Roadsters.
That's cool. That's cool. Thanks for sharing that. The Roadsters that you're driving, how are they holding up, by the way? Like, how's the range on them and whatnot?
The range has been good. Well, nominally. See, I only drive it around Santa Barbara. Of course, it doesn't have supercharging. It's before that. So, you know, you can't really take it on long trips because it takes hours to charge it. So I only use it locally, but it's what I use to drive around any given day, most days. But it has been in maintenance. The reason I have two of them is because sometimes one of them has a problem and has to be sent off for service, and then I have the other one, so that they're down non-trivial amount of the time. But having two of them means that usually one of them is there. Although as of this date today, both of them are in service.
Dan, you would love the new Model 3 Performance. It comes with FSD, 1-month trial, hardware 4. I think it could be time for an upgrade.
Could you cut the top off?
There are some people that have converted their Teslas aftermarket into convertibles, the sexy car lineup.
Yeah, that's why. It's great. It's a great car.
Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak. Omar, what do you say to people who say Tesla should not be testing FSD in public? They should be testing it in closed roads with experienced, licensed, tested, hired internal drivers only.
Well, they do that. They have QA testers in their service centers all across the country and all across the world testing it before it gets to us. You could see, for example, Chuck Cook tweeting when he sees these people outside testing before the software gets to us, they're testing it. Now, utilizing the fleet and customers, I think, is really necessary to get it to a place where it works anywhere. And I think what Tesla is doing is really admirable in that most of these FSD drives I see, Waymo can't do it, Cruise can't do it. There's no robotaxi service that can do it. So there's probably many, many classes of issues that these developers haven't yet just discovered because their ODD is limited to the geofenced areas that they've mapped, right? And the country's a big place. It's a diverse place. You'll figure that out pretty quickly if you try and test FSD. So there's no substitute for really running the model across millions of cars and finding out what the failure cases are. And I think it's kind of an essential part of the process. You can't really just do it with 1,000 cars. Running it on millions of cars helps you find those issues at scale much faster.
Dan, what do you think about that?
Well, the problem, you said closed roads. That isn't necessary. I don't have a problem if they had 500 or 1,000 professional drivers driving their cars on the real roads. That's a lot better than having 10 to 100 times as many non-professionals. That would be a big improvement, and that's pretty much what everybody does. But the argument is we can't make this product work without delivering it to hundreds of thousands of people while it has severe safety defects, like the ones that do not enter signs. As far as I know, it still does not know what a do not enter sign is, and will happily go the wrong way on a one-way street. If it's, there's this thing that says do not enter, it'll just ignore it. It doesn't know what it means. That's my problem. Why are they not fixing these problems? It doesn't, as far as I can tell, the only signs it understands are stop signs and yield signs, which is somewhat questionable whether it really understands yield signs. Oh, and speed limit signs to a certain degree. But that's it. How are you supposed to drive safely when you only know a few different kinds of signs? When are they going to get around to programming in do not enter signs and road close signs and one way? It doesn't know what a one-way sign is, apparently. We've tried that. How can it be almost done when they haven't even gotten around to some of these critical things? School buses, ambulances, these are all things everybody knows about. They happen to people like every week or so, and I have an ambulance or a fire truck at least once a week. It's a regular occurrence. This morning I had a school bus, although actually the lights weren't flashing, but it was parked on the side of the road. You have these incidents. Why are they not implementing them? And I think they should have implemented all of these things that you can find with closed courses and with your 1,000 test drivers. All that should be fixed before we give it to consumers. That's what everybody else does in basically every other market where the products are safety critical, where they can fail and kill people, as opposed to minor inconvenience if it doesn't work.
Yeah, Dan, I have a question for you regarding your opinion on training new versions of FSD in shadow mode. So at the shareholders meeting, the most recent one, Elon mentioned that they are testing various new versions or updates of FSD by running it in parallel to human drivers in Teslas that are not utilizing FSD. So they're running simulations of FSD and then comparing it to the action of the human drivers. What is your opinion on that method of training?
Didn't quite understand that.
I
I
can
mean,
break
running
it down a little
simulations
further.
is
So if you have a Tesla and you're not driving on FSD in the background, the computer is running simulated FSD. And later, when the logs are dumped, they're comparing the data of the decisions that the human driver makes versus the simulated decisions that FSD would have made on the same drive and using that to improve the software.
that sounds fine to me. I mean, yes, simulation is, you should do simulations before you put it on the road at all in case there something really bad gets screwed up. Um, I, I I don't disagree with any of those stages. With any of the stages going up to it, it's just that the stage that we should be at right now is the 1,000 test drivers driving it around until all those guys get great drives and all their problems are eliminated. Then it should be expanded out to consumers, but not before. But not before we've gotten out the most critical failures that I keep identifying as uh, uh, that 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 can't be in the final product. They shouldn't be in a product that's on the road. I just don't see how it's legal to put something on the road that doesn't understand school buses and ambulances. They should have done that
Yeah.
first. They should do
Omar,
it today or yesterday. They shouldn't be putting it into consumers' hands till they fix
Omar.
that problem.
Yeah. I mean, I think really what you want to look at is this a net safety benefit, right? And for Dan out here saying they're rolling it out too quickly, I bet there are a lot of people in this space who are waiting for 12.4 who would beg to differ. They're pissed. They're like, hey, give it to me faster. But Tesla's so careful with these things. And there's no doubt that they're safety critical interventions. That's why it's FSD supervised and not FSD unsupervised, because Dan's right. There can be a safety mistake, like, for example, I showed the other day, which could be potentially dangerous if the human isn't paying attention and ready to take over. But is it a net positive? Remember the story a few years ago where a man was drunk and he drove home and he turned on autopilot and then he fell asleep behind the wheel. And someone saw him asleep on the highway behind the wheel and they called the police. And they went ahead and pulled a cop car in front of him and got him to slow down. So if you said, hey, this guy should not be allowed to have autopilot or FSD because it can still make a safety critical mistake. And well, what if it made a mistake and caused a crash? Well, if he had fallen asleep without any autopilot, he would have crashed, he would have killed himself, potentially, he would have potentially killed an innocent family. And because that technology was there, imperfect as it was, that person's life was saved. And that's not the only story. So, yes, it can have safety critical issues. That's why we have a driver monitoring system. And we've got an all new driver monitoring system in 12.4 that's the best ever, both for users and also for attention and safety. And yeah, I just think that on the net, it's a positive. There is a chance, okay, yeah, there could be an issue, and if someone's not paying attention, it could cause a crash. But that risk is relatively low and mitigated compared to the benefits people are seeing every day, being able to use it, imperfect as it is today.
Well,
Lightspeed.
you said this guy, but we don't know that he would have had a crash. It quite possibly his foot wouldn't have he wouldn't be on the accelerator or whatever. He'd just stop. The car would just come to a stop somewhere, and that's not safe either. But no, neither is driving without, while you're intoxicated or unconscious. You had mentioned earlier about emergency braking and lane keeping and all that kind of stuff. I'm all for all that stuff. That's good. It's on almost every car today. That clearly is saving lives. What we're talking about full self driving is the one where it takes control of the car and makes decisions about turning and stopping that are incorrect decisions. That and what we do not have proof because the proof that had been offered for what, 8 years or something that Tesla had been putting forward turned out to be false. I mean, it was just simply false, and now there is none. Well, actually, that's not true. The false data is still there. They haven't taken it down, even though NHTSA pointed out correctly after we'd shown them that it was comparing apples and oranges. And now we have no data on the safety, reliable scientific data on the safety, which is what we should have before we put it out into the market. We see the people who paid money for it not using it. That is the biggest issue. Those people are afraid to use it because it's not making their life better. It is not a good ADAS system. It scares people. There are people, maybe Omar's one of them, who just sort of live life where it's got to be exciting. There's a lot of other people who don't like excitement. They don't like that. They like stability and calmness and reliability are the major values in their lives. And those people try it because they were told it's full self-driving and they were told that it worked great. And then they tried it and it did something crazy and they got scared. Maybe they tried it again. It will do something crazy again. And then he says, I have to turn this off. I can't do it. My brother-in-law is one of those people. And my sister won't get in the car with them.
Thank you. Lightspirit?
Dan, I have a question for you about the safety data you're talking about. Tesla put out their annual report, their safety report, and it says that 1.5 million cars that's driven